Welcome to the Beyond the Political Spin podcast on this Halloween of 2020.
Welcome to Beyond the Political Spin, your weekly dose of politics, economics, common sense, and things that matter. No lefties, no political correctness, no agenda, no bullshit, and absolutely no political spin. Here's your last line of defence for common sense. Adrian, Vince Lochisano, and Richard Stockman.
Welcome back. We have the wonderful Richard Stockman back in the house
He's
today.
back
Richard.
today, Richard. Hey,
Thanks,
finally.
guys. Great to be back.
And the blue-hatted one doesn't have his blue hat with him here this morning. I'm very disappointed.
Having a bit of fun with the soundboard.
Well, you're going to explain yourself. You've been away for 5 episodes. What's been going on?
Council elections. We're going to talk a bit about that later
Yeah,
today,
yes,
aren't we?
yes.
So, but pretty dirty and pretty grubby. So
Really?
we'll get right into that.
So did you get up? Tell us. Don't
No.
keep us in suspense.
He doesn't know yet,
We
does
won't
he?
find out for another week and a half.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a 50-50. So 50-50.
So
at
we
this
can't
stage.
quite say Councillor Richard Stockman yet.
Not quite yet, but hopefully very soon.
And
Well-
of course it is the Halloween edition
It is the Halloween edition.
on this 31st of October.
It's the Freedom edition. It's the reopening edition.
Yes. And it'll also be the taking offence at everything edition by the sound of it. So. Anyway,
It will be.
we'll cut through all of that. And we've got previews of the Queensland election, which is actually on today.
On today, yep.
We
should actually
the
put that on
US
the screen.
election, which is only in
3 days.
3 days in the US, but it'll actually be
4 days
Wednesday.
here.
It'll actually be Wednesday the 4th over here while
Yeah. Yep.
while that election's taking place in the US. So we'll preview those, and there's a few interesting topics to discuss. But first of all, I guess
Congratulations
how
to
do you
Melbourne.
feel being free a little
Being
bit more?
able to watch businesses resume, I think for me was quite heartwarming. Actually, the day, when was it? Tuesday, I think it was. I actually headed down to the local shopping centre there where I live, and to see life back. I know I've been advocating for business for a long time, but I had one look at the outdoor area where all the restaurants are, and mate, like literally brought a tear to my eye to see. Getting emotional, mate.
Really? Yeah.
We've been pretty close with quite a few of the business owners, and to hear their story. Sorry, boys.
That's all right. Look, it is true, and it wasn't. It was a long time coming, and a lot of business owners, Richard, as you would well know, have been really on the brink of collapse, both emotionally, psychologically, and of course financially.
It's that mental health thing, and we all know. And I think the good thing about this, Adrian, we all know how important business owners and businesses are to us, and we've rallied around businesses, and these are hardworking people that put their life into things, and good people. So I think that's been the good thing.
Well, we've had our views on these things in the last few weeks. What's been your view of the state government's approach to small and medium-sized businesses right throughout this last 6-7 months of
we will never
pandemic?
We'll never forget it. So no matter what excuses are made, this will never be forgotten. This attack on small business, medium-sized business, all businesses, it's been absolutely shocking. It really has been. And there's been little disregard for mental health. You haven't heard that as much in the news or anything, have you? You know, and it's affected.
No, we haven't heard enough of it. That's for sure. And it's certainly. Here I am, quite emotional, and it is because of that. I've headed down regularly to the local cafes, and we knew them before. And as I said, to see and hear their own story, but the stress, the heartache, and the uncertainty that they've had to go through for it's been 8 months. This is massive. Business can take a toll when you're doing really well. I'm one of them, and unfortunately, I'm not able to trade yet. I can't operate yet, but
I was just gonna
I'm
ask you
certainly
that.
extremely happy to see.
Especially
it was
the
just
hospitality sector.
even the employees, like the local Japanese restaurant we go to. Sorry, man, I got bloody tears in my eyes. The local Japanese restaurant we go to. The employees over the last 6 months have been really down. They're open for takeaway, but they're uncertain too. Are they going to have a job tomorrow? What's going to happen? Is the business owner going broke? Am I, and to walk out there the other day, it was actually a nice day, which helped. I think the vibe was really good.
Yep.
And the staff were so happy to see people, to interact with people.
Again.
Yes, it's only 20 people and it's not ideal for a lot of businesses, and a lot of businesses are still shut until the next step, which I think at the moment is
8th
November 8th, because they just cannot, it's not viable to operate for 20 people. But I think that the life in people, it's just a massive relief. And I'm hoping that one day I can see it too, but I'm certainly very, very, very happy for those that can reopen the doors.
Well, we've seen the hospitality sector to a large extent reopen, cafes, restaurants, pubs, etc.
Yep.
But there are still a lot of industries that are in limbo, and one of them is, in fact, yours, which is the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
When are we going to be able? Have you got any answers? When are we going to be able to hold functions again and have, reception centres with 200 and 300 and 400 people in them and that sort of a gathering? Where are you at as an industry?
This is
and also the arts and entertainment.
Well,
concerts and things.
Well, we fall under arts and entertainment because we do. One thing that people forget about what we do is we're not just an events management agency, but we create work for a lot of household names, entertainers, and that rely on us for a lot of work. We take bookings, we get gigs for them, and there's a lot of people that and it may not be a celebrity. It's people like yourself who have a profession as an event host and rely on us to generate your work and find events for you. And there's a lot of that. A lot of people that rely on us. And I'll tell you one thing. It's and you've played a big part in my mind too. Like it's you got to try and sleep at night with the stress of where your income's going to come from, but also it kills you deep inside to know that people rely on an income that is generated by my work that I can't provide. And I'm in a time where I've got just as much uncertainty, and you've got nothing to give, and it eats at you. It's mentally, it's straining. It's very, very tough. But as far as our industry goes, there is no word, and there's been a massive cry out from our industry, especially because it does feel like we've been left behind. And it's not just events that we host ourselves, but we work with a lot of the biggest charities in Australia, and they host their annual galas, and it's them too that their gala dinners or their luncheons and the big events they hold every year, that generates the money that allows them to do what they do best in reaching out and to certain communities and offering assistance and doing all these things. And without these events being held, what happens to that year of fundraising that they don't have that is now in 2021 not going to be able to be funded for a lot of the programs that they provide, So it's a massive chain effect. There's a lot of livelihoods affected by our industry. A lot of people rely on our industry, and at the moment there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I hate to say it, but based on the nature of what our Premier Daniel Andrews has done so far, which is very small and cautious steps, and he's still to a large extent got the noose around our necks with the 25 kilometre, from home rule still in place at the moment until at least November 8. There are still other forms of restrictions in terms of where you can go. I don't know that he's going to allow some of these industries to even open up this side of the new year. And some of them, I don't know if they can keep going another month or 2 or 3 without business. I mean, if he doesn't release the shackles in the new year at the very, very latest, a lot of these industries and businesses and companies are going to go broke, and a lot more people are going to head to the unemployment queues.
Well, there's only so much, your previous success, which has allowed you to save some money. There's only so long that can last.
Your savings, you're living off savings at the moment. That's literally what most people
that's
are
what
doing.
it is. And especially in our industry, I think this is where we've been hit hard. And too, Richard, you're involved with us quite a bit. You've seen what goes on and the work we put in and the amount of people that rely on us every year for work. Well, it's typical in our industry, I should say, that it's all contract. It's all people are employed on a contractual basis. We've spoken about this, and for a business owner, and there's many of us in our industry, that means that we are not eligible for these grants that have been given for multiple JobKeeper payments, right? And, I've got my household, we rely on our company. So my wife and I, our entire household income comes from my company that has had no revenue this year, right? We've not been eligible for the grants because we don't have employees as such. We contract. And if you count the amount of people, as you've seen through the year, different entertainers and all the events that we're involved
industry,
in,
isn't it?
we employ a lot of people. But again,
On a contract
because they're not
basis.
on the books, we miss out on a lot. And we've had to endure some of the toughest times that I'll ever face in my entire life. It is hard to watch, your years of hard work and savings and the dedication you've put into making a business successful just kind of slowly wash away because, we're locked down for so long.
Enforcing you to.
The government is just not allowing anything to happen. And so many of us are ready. We've got COVID safe plan. We know how to manage.
Well, I was going to ask you this, and I'll be interested in your opinion, Rich. Is it too slow? Because we're down to single-digit numbers every day, 1, 3, 0, 2. Surely we can open up the way New South Wales has and really allow the economy to start moving in a positive direction in a big way, and that will allow people to re-employ. As more people are employed, more people are spending, things will start ticking upwards from there. What do you think?
Well, I just hope it's not political. And I think with the JobKeeper coming from the federal government, as we come closer to that getting abolished, which we know that's going to hurt a lot of people.
That's not too far away.
That's not too far away. Now, if the state government continues this up until then it looks bad on the federal government. They pull that out and it's their fault. They should be keeping the payments going. So that could be a political ploy to make this go longer and longer, because I wonder why you hold back. And could be an attack on businesses, and we know that
It's certainly an attack on businesses.
yeah, we know that part of it, and also an attack on fundraising. You mentioned fundraising,
Yep.
and you mentioned volunteerism. Volunteerism is something that the Andrews government doesn't like. They don't like the CFA volunteers. They
Yep.
want to have everything
True.
as public servants.
They've got form there.
Yeah, it's very true. And again, like what doesn't make sense is, I went out for dinner last night with a few friends. Now it's not committing a crime, which feels good.
What
But,
is
you know,
McDonald's like for dinner on a Friday night?
We went to local grilled actually, which was very nice. But
Yes.
you've got a restaurant full of max capacity at 20 inside, 50 outside, whatever it is. No one's wearing a mask, obviously, because you can't when you're eating and drinking. Now, how is that any different to our industry when we work with some of the biggest venues in the country
Yep.
who have come to the party and, a lot of them are offering the space. So in normal circumstances, you would have to have minimum number requirements to take over a certain amount of space of a venue. So if you've got 150 people, they'll give you the smaller space. If you want the bigger space, there's either a minimum cost or you have to have the larger numbers. Now, a lot of these venues are coming to the party and saying, look, we'll give you the larger space. It's not going to cost any extra because of the density requirements.
Yep.
So if you've got a space that is bloody 1,000 square meters, why can you only have 20 people indoors? Like that it just does not make sense.
Exactly my point. It
So
should
a
be
local
based on
cafe,
square area.
Yeah, a local cafe has 20 people inside, 50 outside, but a venue that holds 1,000 people still can only have 20 people inside. A reception centre, for instance. It's just ridiculous.
But I think Daniel Andrews doesn't trust the police to count to more than 20, because when they go there to check on venues as to how many people they've got inside, they don't trust them to say, well, this is a 180 square metre premises, so therefore divide that by 4 square metres and you should be allowed to have, 45 people in there. They don't trust them to do that sort of arithmetic. Yeah. So all they say is, no, whether your premises is 20 square metres or whether it's 2,000 square metres, you're only allowed to have 20 people inside.
Yeah,
That is ridiculous in terms of being fair on those larger venues who employ a lot more people,
the
have a lot
overheads.
more cost,
Yep.
they're paying a lot more rent,
Yeah.
and yet they can still only have 20, the same as your little corner cafe.
Yeah, that's right.
So that corner cafe may even struggle to get more than 20 inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
And 50 people outside.
Correct.
In fact, some of these restaurants and cafes don't have any outside capacity.
No, they don't.
While we're still talking about businesses, did you hear about the constipated accountant?
The what?
The constipated accountant.
This will be interesting.
He's working it out with a pencil.
Yes,
No, but it is.
very good.
It's very
that
true.
Reminds me of one of the reasons why Richard was away in the last few weeks, Adrian.
What, he had constipation?
No, not what quite. It's the right part of the body, but it was he was having a prostate check, and when the doctor said, "Look, I'm just going to stick my finger up there and check it out for you," apparently Richard said, "Well, if you're going to do that, can I have 2 fingers, please?" and the doctor said, "What do you want me to put 2 fingers up there for?" He said, "I always get a second opinion." Oh, dear.
That's a good one.
Anyway.
That's a good one. But yes, it's certainly not making sense with regard to the business, especially hospitality, and it comes as that it's the viability. And I've discussed, obviously, as you know, my father's had restaurants around Melbourne for 50 years, so I'm very familiar with the industry. And if you actually get into the thought of the business owner, and that's what a lot of people need to do to understand, because there's been a lot of restaurants coming out on social media with people, placing bookings and not rocking up and complaining about them asking for deposits for a seat, and put yourself in their shoes. They've got overheads doesn't change. When they open the doors for 100 people or 20 people, the overheads are the same. The fridge size is the same. They've got to have those fridges running. They've got to have all your lights on. You're not going to walk into a restaurant if half the lights are off just because there's half the amount of people.
Their landlords are not giving them any sort of help either.
No, very little. And, let's say the local Italian restaurant. It's got a pizza oven. You need your pizza maker. You got a kitchen. You need a chef. You got a coffee machine. You need a barista. And you need someone to serve the people that are walking in the door. That's a minimum of 4 staff before you can even think about opening the doors.
And all you've got is 20 people.
Call it $1,000 a night. Call it $1,000 a night on wages.
You're lucky to break even.
The food you're serving doesn't come for free. You've had to cook it, prepare it, hours in the back end, okay, the cost of the ingredients. How much food and drink do you need to serve to come out with a gross profit of $1,000 to cover the staff wages and then see a net profit at the end of it? It's massive, right?
Well, that's why I think in a lot of cases, people are opening up and yes, they're relieved. And yes, they're looking forward to trying to get things back to normal.
There's still heartache.
But in this period where they've got restrictions like 20 inside and 50 outside, a lot of these people will be barely making ends meet, let alone making a profit.
Absolutely.
And I think that what's happened here is that everyone in the community is so relieved that the lockdown has finally come to an end, and there's this feeling of freedom and starting to rejoice that. And I think the media is pushing that barrow as well. Isn't it fantastic? People are out eating again, et cetera, et cetera. But behind the scenes, in those businesses, there's a lot of business owners still saying,
still a lot of stress.
It's nice that everyone's got a smile on their face, but hey, I'm still not making any money, and I'm still probably losing money to some extent until we're allowed to open up in full.
And some restaurants were struggling before this, and we're in a recession as well. I mean, it's not an easy time.
It was hard times for hospitality in 2019, right? So going into this is just more devastation. But I think if I can ask people to do anything, it's, respect what's going on with restaurants and the requirements they've put in place with regard to bookings and deposits. When you've got...
They can't afford to have 10 people book in and then just not turn up.
Correct. And, there was one restaurant that had...
knock back other people that might have come in the front door.
13 out of 20 bookings.
The Cherry Bar,
that didn't rock up at the Cherry Bar.
Yep.
Right?
That's ridiculous.
Now, come on, right? And for those arguing about them taking deposit, think about the situation they're in.
Exactly.
And there are plenty of people that will take your spot if you're not an honest diner. So please, respect what's going on with the industry. The heartache they've had to endure for the last 8 months of their life... All right, the sleepless nights, let them get back to some degree and make it easy for them. Yep. And if you can afford it, tip the fucking shit out of them because, mate, they deserve it. Right?
There you go. And then just talking on the lefties, we've got to mention the word lefties here because they're very so-called considerate to so many people on their causes, on the minorities. When it comes to restaurateurs and business people, the consideration doesn't seem to be there. They're not, I don't know, if you feel that the lefties are... They're not showing that same consideration when it comes to the businesses that make up the fibre of our fabric.
Yeah,
is that an anti-boss type mentality? Is it? Anti-employer mentality.
I've been talking about this for a while too, and I think it's exactly that. It's this sense of entitlement that we see from these socialists that they think the world owes them something before they've earned anything.
Yeah, but do you think that they look at a business owner and think you're making a lot more money than
absolutely.
your employees,
they do,
you're making more
correct.
money than the rest of us.
Absolutely.
You ought to be paying more
because you drive,
et
the Mercedes that And I go back to the
That
thing.
Mercedes is probably on hire purchase. And
Absolutely, right?
behind
Usually
these
it's
payments.
usually it's for tax purposes, minimising tax and all these type of things. But let's not take away from, the amount of people they employ. Okay, the more successful people we have, the more employment we have, the more following success we see. Because a lot of these successful business owners are mentors. They then create other entrepreneurs, and business succeeds, and the flow-on effect, and you have a successful society, right? Like we don't want to get to a point where that's all taken away by the socialists, because that's exactly what they want to do. And people that do have ambition, there's no incentive.
Well, on the subject of socialists, Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, was roundly congratulated and applauded by people on the Tuesday. Well done, Dan. Thanks, Dan. I mean, he waited literally until we had 0 cases, 0 deaths. It was on that day, and no sooner did he announced, kicking and screaming, it seemed to me,
Yep.
finally that we were going to have an end to the lockdown, and finally we're going to ease some restrictions. It was almost like the advisors behind the scenes said, Dan, if you don't do this, there's going to be outright mutiny in the community. There's going to be protests everywhere, because they've had a gutful. Even the police, I'm told, had warned the state government, if you do not release the brakes now, we can sense that it is at a tipping point.
Yep.
And he was almost forced to announce those restrictions to be eased and the lockdown to be finished.
Yeah.
I mean, 111 days, I think it was, of lockdown.
Yeah.
And in many of those weeks, the numbers were down to 10, 15, 20, same sorts of numbers that New South Wales is quite comfortably coping with, and yet their economy is fully opened.
Yeah. And
Such is the mistrust in the contact tracing
that's what I was gonna
capabilities
touch on.
of Victoria.
Yep.
I mean, do you know how many people that were in the health department before this pandemic took hold? 87. Do you know how many there are now? 2,600 people employed, many in that contact tracing department, and yet they can't handle half a dozen or a dozen outbreaks or cases a day. It's just ridiculous. And yet he's trying to tell the rest of the country that the Victorian contact tracing system is as good as anyone else's.
Superior.
In fact, that it's superior to anyone else's, and that New South Wales is taking some hints off them?
Yeah.
Come on, give us a break. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line though. We've been locked away due to his lack of confidence in his contract tracing department. Right?
Yeah, but the other
and
thing is,
there
don't
is
forget
sheer incompetence.
Why has this contact tracing been necessary? Because of the second wave.
Which was caused by the hotel quarantine.
Caused by the hotel quarantine.
What's your opinion on all this, Rich? Because obviously we haven't had you here, but I'm sure you've been watching what's going on.
I feel like I've had my hands tied behind my back for a few months, and I've been punched in the face a few times.
Yeah.
And that's how it feels. It's we try.
Sorry,
to
Rich, it did feel good though.
we try to be creative.
I
and
tried to be gentle.
we try to be positive as well, and look, it's really, really hard, and I think he's made it as hard as he possibly can to infuriate us. I actually feel for the people that have cracked it, and doing things that they normally wouldn't do, because I think that's happened a little bit out there too. People are probably, and we don't know what goes on behind closed doors as well, mind you. There's all sorts of things that can happen where people, it affects their mental ability.
Oh, you mean like visit their parents, those sorts of crimes?
Yeah, that's the one. So, well, but no,
what a crime!
It's shocking. So no, look, I'm with you guys. I've been listening to the podcast since I've been away. I've obviously, been trying to, and look. Adrian, the reason why I'm running for local council is I firmly believe that's a big breeding ground for the state government to become so powerful. 17 out of the last 21 years in power.
Yep.
And that's almost ridiculous. It doesn't happen unless you're in a dictatorship, does it? 17 out of 21 years.
Yep.
And it's a breeding ground is local council. And look, these elections probably shouldn't have gone ahead. We've got a lot of good people running, and that's when I say good people, a lot of just normal common sense people. Common sense, and that'll add to what we want to add to the community. And a lot of them are struggling. I'm seeing the results come through, and I'm seeing a lot of people that aren't going to get in. So it was a really hard one to call this election. I mean, I know we'd probably be going crazy if we didn't have the election, but you couldn't door knock, you couldn't do a lot of things, and unfortunately it's going to be a lot of the same old in local council.
Yeah, I think it was it was certainly groomed for those that are already in power to continue on with their reign. But yeah, it's an interesting time all around. But going back to what Vince was saying with the the businesses and his decision to kind of ease restrictions with business, I think that did come too from a lot of the people that have had enough. And we saw quite a few that week leading up to that. We saw some businesses that said, stuff it, I'm opening the doors, and you want to find me. And there was hairdressers, and we saw Harry Hutchinson in Berwick there, that you could tell the financial strain and the mental strain and everything else that comes with owning a business and not being able to do what you do. It got to a point where it was just too much, and he opened the doors, and mate, the support that the community gave him was incredible. Unbelievable. He had people coming, putting $1,000 in his hand just to,
he didn't want to
allow him to continue on with. No, he didn't. He didn't. He's donated it to charity, but just the fact that there's people there that have had enough, but they've got no voice. They wanted to,
support him.
Almost support him to continue on with voicing out for, and do go against the rules to some degree, because. It's almost, you've got this battle of what's legal and what's right? And we're stuck in between here. It's like,
what's legally allowable versus what's morally correct.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see with the businesses and with the popularity vote. And we don't know how popular Andrews is at the moment. I mean,
if you believe the latest polls, he's still got the majority of support in Victoria.
Well, how can that be?
I think it was 52%.
Well, how can that be?
Well, that just to me is one of two things. Either the poll is completely non-indicative of and doesn't take a wide cross-section of the community, because I think there was only 800 and something people polled.
Yes, correct.
But nevertheless, even if it is accurate, it just goes to show you the percentage of people out there that have not been financially impacted, right, by the decisions of the Andrews government.
There's a lot of people that are better off.
Listen, there's
way better off.
There are two very distinct sides of people who are employed in the community, okay? There's the private sector and there's the public sector.
Yep.
The private sector wages during this pandemic in Victoria have gone down by, I think it was $8 or $9 billion.
Yep.
Okay? The public sector's wages, salaries, have gone up by about 90 million.
Yep.
That just goes to show you that there's one side feeling all the pain,
and one side,
and the other side is not even feeling an inch of pain. Yep. Okay? If they've been impacted because someone got sick with coronavirus, of course, yes, then they did. But in terms of their own financial position, in terms of how much money goes into their bank account every month, not impacted at all.
Yep.
In fact, a lot of those public servants and bureaucrats have actually had wage rises.
Yeah, but this is.
And by the way, I must correct something that I mentioned on a previous podcast, that the top bureaucrat in Victoria who recently resigned because he misled the inquiry into the hotel quarantine, Chris Eccles.
Yep.
I think I mentioned he was on around $500,000 a year, which is close to what the Prime Minister's making. Well, I was wrong. He's on 690 to 600 to, I think they said, to 700,000, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
So close enough to $700,000.
Yep.
That's what he was on. He's on more than the Prime Minister. I think the Prime Minister gets about 550. It's ridiculous. How come these bureaucrats are on so much money?
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree.
And of course, they suffer the same thing as every other Labor Party politician, amnesia when they go to an inquiry. All of a sudden they can't remember anything.
Yep.
And look, that's a bit of an aside there, but nevertheless, what the point I'm making is that some people are affected by it. Some people have even made money through it because of the additional payments, job seeker, job keeper. Some people are on more money.
Grants,
a lot of casual workers.
Grants coming out left, right and centre for those that...
Casual workers, for example, that had been a casual worker at their place of employment for more than 12 months before JobKeeper came in, they qualified.
Yeah.
Now, they might have been on $150 or $200 a week as a casual worker.
Yeah.
But if they'd been there for more than 12 months, all of a sudden, guess what they're getting? $750 a week.
This is the federal government. That was
clearly an imbalance in the policy, but the federal government just wanted the money out there, calm the farm, let everyone have this money and keep the economy going.
Yep.
Well, that was a clear red herring in that policy.
Yep.
So some people have actually made money through this.
Yeah, there's been a lot
Some
of
people have been
have
sitting
made
on their backsides at home doing nothing and getting all this money from JobKeeper.
Well, someone's got to pay for it all in the end, don't they? You know?
Well, the taxpayer.
Business.
Absolutely. And we saw this with a few businesses on the reopening there that I've got friends that are in the hairdressing and beauty industries and, saw on Facebook they're calling out if anyone knows any hairdressers that wanted to work because their workers don't want to return. Their preference is to sit at home on the job seeker and not actually work any hours or help the hand that feeds you.
But see, this feeds into the original question about why Daniel Andrews has got all this support. Because the more he keeps everyone locked down and doing nothing but
easier life is for these people.
Oh, well, we can just sit around and do nothing and keep getting all this money from the federal government. I wonder whether they would say the same thing if the federal government wasn't pitching in with all of this money from JobKeeper and JobSeeker going up.
Yep.
I mean, they're quite happy for Daniel Andrews to keep them locked up because it's just easy street.
Yeah.
That's why he's popular in some cases. And look, if it wasn't for the federal government assistance, I think he would be very unpopular for having kept everyone down. Other than, of course, his lovies in the public service and the bureaucracies.
Yeah, of course.
All right? Which have gone up by an amazing amount of people.
But
since
they're always immune. Take COVID away. That's a sector that's just always immune to stress, heartache, and anything else that's related to employment and unemployment.
So the last thing I want to see is all this bullshit about we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Because we're bloody well not.
Oh, we haven't.
It's the
we
private
haven't
sector
been.
that's doing it the toughest.
Yeah.
The business owners and the employees of private companies are all feeling the heat and feeling the pinch in a big way. Some of them have taken their own lives. Yep. But in the public sector, if you work for the government or I Stand With Dan fans, you're coasting. Yep. No wonder you think the sun shines out of his ass.
There's going to have to be some cuts eventually. So eventually Dan's going to have to be the bad man in their eyes too. Public sector will have to be cut eventually.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't do it.
What, they don't
he
do
doesn't
it.
do it, Richard.
They don't
you know
do
what
it.
he does? He does what he did a few months ago. As soon as the COVID pandemic happened, we're going to need to borrow more money. So what did he do? He went and got access to another $24 billion of extra credit. It's like going to your bank with your credit card and saying, listen, my credit limit's $25,000. Can I increase it to $50,000, please?
No, but eventually.
And that's what he did.
But you can't keep doing that forever.
But that's what he's doing.
But that's what they've done. History shows, Richard.
You can't sell the bait.
That's just
you
what
can't
they've
lease
done.
out the bait.
Richard, mark my words. Mark my words, okay? He has already telegraphed that there's going to be this, we're going to have a massive recovery program. You know what that said to me in big red lights?
Yeah, money.
Borrowing.
Yeah, of course.
He is going to put us on the most massive credit card in Victoria's ever seen. And you know what he's going to justify it with? But they're going to be all infrastructure projects and we're going to have all these people employed. Do you know what they all are? Unionised labour. Yeah. The whole damn lot of them. Of course.
But this is where, then we're going to see the flow-on effect of, higher taxes and like I said, land taxes and all these things that come to those who have worked decades and decades, who own an investment property, one or two, that you usually purchase and hope that one day your children will benefit from that. Mm-hmm. Now, so many people are not going to be able to afford to maintain these properties. They've got to get the money somewhere, and they always go back to the hard-working Aussies, the private sector, and they will punish them with higher taxes and more penalties to recoup the funds that they're dishing out to the public sector. It happens all the time, and history shows itself.
Ace, I asked you this on the Accidental podcast, the first one, and I asked you this question, and I said, if you can't beat them, do you join them? And the reason why I say, I'm not saying that I'll do it, but the reason why I asked you that question is that if you can't beat them, join them, well, what can we do? Either we can beat them, otherwise what's the point if we can't beat them both? I've just asked the question to Vince. I've said, what's the next step? And you've just said that borrowing more. To me, that doesn't sound like a beat anyone. With the council elections, all these people getting in that are all Labor and Greens, the preferences flow, they'll get in again, the state government. And there'll be a mass exodus of good people like you and I that'll leave Victoria, but that'll make Victoria even stronger. Lefties. That'll be a really strong.
You mean it'll make it weaker, but it'll be infiltrated with
infiltrated more. But I mean, a stronger state that's run from that
It'll
side.
be a very weakened state. If everyone who's got any entrepreneurial go in them at all decides to go to New South Wales or Queensland or some other state in Australia because they've given up on Victoria, you will lose all sorts of business people who would normally invest hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into the state, and they will say, no, not for me, Victoria, I've got no confidence in it,
Yep.
and they will take their money elsewhere.
And we should have seen this. You've said it, Vince.
And
when
the jobs will be lost as a
when the
result.
East-West link was not locked, when it was just torn, that contract. And we don't want to go back to that because we sound like, but actually it's really hitting home now
Yep.
that he just has no interest in, saving money.
Adrian here, Adrian nailed it on the head very early on. I think it was our first or second podcast. If it's not a Daniel Andrews idea, if it's not something that he can say, I own this, it doesn't happen.
Yep.
The East-West link wasn't his idea, so it's not going to happen. Okay? Using ADF help for the hotel quarantine? No. We want to do it our way. So if it's not instigated by him, not his idea, and he can't put his stamp on it, he doesn't want to have a part of it.
Yep. And it seems
It's
that way.
It's very common in a lot of decisions that are made in
Yeah,
Victoria.
it seems that way. It's been that way for a very long time, and especially I think it's more evident through this COVID pandemic that we face, that we've seen him make decisions that are, totally, he's got, it's like rogue decisions in comparison to the rest of the country. And again, let's not forget. All right, we'll go there again just quickly, but I don't want to take away from people starting to gain freedom and businesses reopening. We're able to go out and have dinner.
You don't want to.
I'm very. I don't want to.
You don't pour cold water on the enthusiasm.
I don't. Right, because I feel the vibe, and I said, I am so freaking happy to see people that are back to business.
Yep.
People out to go out and enjoy. Mentally, it's just being able to go out last night with my friends felt amazing.
Yeah.
Right,
liberating.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I don't want to take away from that at all, but we got to remember why we are in this position. Right, and also the fact that it is way, way, way too late for a lot of people.
Absolutely, it is.
Take a walk down Lygon Street.
Oh, it's like
take a walk
down
through the city.
It breaks my heart to see
It is
Lygon
fucking
Street.
empty.
A shadow of what it reminded me of. Walking up there the other day. You know those old Western movies where you see the
Fucking tumbleweeds.
the dust, the tumbleweeds going past with the wind, and there's nobody around. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
It felt like a ghost town.
Yeah.
There was nothing and nobody open.
Absolutely.
And this is the place that used to be the most vibrant restaurant and cafe hub
and it's not
in Melbourne.
And it's not just there.
Stuffed.
It's many places around, in suburban, shopping strips and all that, where we're seeing shops that are just empty and empty. And when you go out and all that, have the best time ever, okay? Mm-hmm. But let's not forget that there are people that are at home because their businesses are shut. They cannot afford to make their mortgage repayments, okay?
And where do they go?
They're being forced out of their own homes to rent, okay? There is a lot of heartache, and we cannot forget it. And what I don't want to fucking have people forget is why we are here. Do not let the happiness and the freedom detract from who needs to be made accountable. Yep. The only reason we are in this position is because hotel quarantine was a total fuck up, okay? The one part of this pandemic that the virus should not have escaped from, the one place that the virus
and it didn't in every other state in Australia.
Correct.
It didn't.
This was the one place, and we are the only place in the entire country that let it escape. Yep. We are the only place in the entire country that rejected ADF support, and we are the only place in the entire country that faced a second wave as a pure result from incompetence and bad decision-making from our state government. Do not forget it.
And
they have blood on their hands. They are responsible for 800 dead Victorians. Okay.
Yep.
Do not forget it. Make them pay. Enjoy your freedom. Enjoy life. Get back to business, but make them accountable. That's all I ask.
Yeah, well, I just hope that people have got memories that last longer than 2 years. That's all I can say, because in Queensland, and they've got an election coming up today, if any Queenslander had half a memory and half a brain, they'd look back on how corrupt this state government that they have in place right now has been. Yep. They have run up the debt bill like mad to all sorts of record levels, and they still haven't even brought down a budget since COVID came into place, because they're so fearful of losing votes, because the debt in Queensland is, believe me, going to go well up to over $100 billion,
Yep.
the highest in the country.
Yep.
Okay? and they don't want to let people know about that figure before the election. So they've refused to bring down a budget. That alone should tell every Queenslander they're hiding a lot of bad news there.
Yep.
They don't deserve to get in.
And all that money, someone's benefiting. And we talked about that's that 50%.
But even 18 months, 2 years ago, they were stopping the Adani mine from going ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We've spoken
Right?
about that. Yeah,
Why should people
spot on.
forget these things?
No, they shouldn't.
But yet, the opinion polls, if you want to believe them, still have Labor in front. The opinion polls in Victoria still has Daniel Andrews at 52% approval. The opposition leader, Michael O'Brien, 15%.
Yep. Well,
I mean, what do you make of these things?
these polls, and you've seen it, Richard. You've been in the campaigns and all that recently, but I think these polls are just as fucking corrupt as the government themselves,
Well,
mate.
why don't we move along, because we need to probably get off Victoria.
We do.
I've just mentioned the Queensland election. I'll just give you a quick overview of that as it's happening today. Labor currently holds a 2-seat majority in the 93 electorates that are up for grabs. So obviously you need 47. That's the big number tonight that either side needs to form a majority government in Queensland. They reckon up to 20 seats could flip. There is a large crossbench. The Katter Australian Party, you all know Bob Katter, the very colourful Queensland politician. Are you taking after him, Rich, with your big blue hat? Are you trying to sort of emulate Bob Katter for Victoria, or not quite as right-wing as Bob? There's also a Greens candidate who had a seat. One Nation held one seat, and there's an independent. So there's even talk today that neither side might get a majority and have to form some sort of a coalition.
Yep.
I suspect that if that's the case, it'll end up being a Labor government that gets back in with a minority. Because that's what tends to happen. A lot of these minor parties tend to side with the Labor Party. I mentioned that last week that, half of the independents and so-called minor parties, Greens will always side with Labor above Liberal.
I thought One Nation was on the move up. Is that right?
Well, actually, Pauline Hanson's been conspicuously quiet during this Queensland election. I thought she might have been a bit more vocal throughout the thing, but anyway, we're not in Queensland, so maybe they've had more local coverage of her than what we've seen down in the
she's quite active. She's been doing a lot on social media, so I take it that's probably we're just not hearing about it here. There's enough going on in Victoria.
Seriously, this mob that's currently running the joint and how they've made decisions through the COVID pandemic to deny people access into Queensland to see their dying parents, yet let the AFL run their whole shebang up there on the Gold Coast. They've let famous movie stars in, making exemptions for them for quarantine. There's been one rule for some and another rule for most of the others.
There's been no compassion whatsoever.
Right?
No compassion whatsoever. At a time where we need it most.
Yeah. And the way they've actually run the state, right? And kept borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. They clearly cannot manage money, this Queensland state Labor government.
Yep.
Yet they could very well get back in.
Yep.
Who's the opposition leader?
Opposition leader is Deb Frecklington. They had a debate yesterday, which
she presents herself really well.
Yes, they had a debate yesterday, which I saw, which was held in front of a whole heap of Yahoo Labor supporters. And that's why every time Anastasia said anything, that they clapped and cheered and made it sound like it was popular.
Yeah.
And whenever Deb Frecklington spoke, you could just about hear crickets most of the time.
Yeah.
So, nevertheless, I think she handled herself pretty well.
Yep.
Not 100% sure whether she cuts through enough to sway voters over, but really they should be flushing this mob down the toilet.
Yep.
The mob that's running it now, they do not deserve to get in the way they've handled things.
Yep.
Palaszczuk has been playing politics with COVID-19. Make no mistake.
Absolutely,
Every
she has.
decision has been politically motivated.
At the
Nothing to do with
expense-
health
yep.
advice, nothing to do with anything. She's a liar.
Yep.
Okay? And Queenslanders should be seeing through all this. But again, half the population.
All at the
What can
expense
you
of
say?
people's lives.
Yeah.
But if I can just say, this is where I go back again, and it seems like there's a lot of females that are, in
Positions of power.
positions of power over in Queensland, and
what's wrong with that, Mr. Adrian?
no, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, I go back to, are they there on merit? Does she have the the ability or the merit to conduct herself in ways that matter if you're comparing to someone like Gladys, right, who has proven in many ways, right, again, I don't think she should still have her position, but she's proven in many ways why she is there and that she has the efficiency,
But
the
did she
ability,
prove that
the competence to
beforehand?
do
But
that.
did she prove that before she became Premier or since she became Premier? Because in fairness to Deb, Deb Frecklington hasn't become Premier yet.
No, I know, but there's just...
Now, she has been
you've got-
voted in by her party. Her party would have had other candidates, male and female,
Correct.
that would have gone up for the position.
Now, why are they doing it? Are they doing it so it's you're going to have a much
What,
better
that
chance?
we think a woman will be better off against Anastasia because she's a woman?
Absolutely.
Is that what you think that Deb Frecklington's
Absolutely.
in there for? No, I don't agree.
No, well...
No, I don't agree.
Again, I think a lot of these people are too easily persuaded by the aesthetics, and I think a lot of these women that are in the positions they have are there simply because of that reason, the aesthetics, right? And you look, CHO is a female. Everywhere, they're so female empowered over there in Queensland. It's insane. And again, I wonder, is it because that's what the people
and before
are...
that, they had Anna Bligh.
Right, yeah, I don't know.
She
Vince.
led the Labor Party.
Really
as
shits
a
me.
premier.
And I've got no problem with women doing great things and being. That's not what it's about. But just
You're saying,
earn it.
are
Be
they
there for
getting
the
it
right reasons.
As a token
okay?
reason because they happen to be female,
Correct.
rather than because they're the best
Correct.
person for the job.
Absolutely.
Well, none of us really know. At the end of the day,
No, but it
it's only
seems
the
that
people.
way. No one will ever know. But it certainly seems that way to me.
Look, for what it's worth, if Queenslanders are wise enough to make a change of government tonight, I believe Deb Frecklington, geez, she's got a hard surname to say, especially with
Deserves
a
it.
mouthful of marbles.
Freckle. Just call her Freckle.
I think she'll make a very capable and competent premier, and I like a lot of the policies that she's espousing. She's also not afraid to go up to towns like Townsville
Yep.
and was it Rockhampton or Cairns?
Cairns,
And
yep.
say, we're going to impose a curfew here because youth crime is out of control.
Yep.
People feel unsafe at night.
Yep.
They're going berserk down there for some reason, the youth of northern Queensland. And she's not afraid to say, well, we're going to really take a hard line approach with this. And I respect that because that is not the softly, approach to not offend anyone. She's prepared to say, I don't care if I lose some voters on that. I think I'll probably gain more respect from others because I want to go.
Yeah, I
hard
agree. And this is the fine line we've got. And again, you've probably seen this. It's the fine line between doing what needs to be done, but then what people not wanting to be told what to do.
Yep.
Right. And I think that just goes. We've seen a lot of progression over the last 10, 20 years, and it seems a lot of it is because people just don't want to be. Told what to do or advised one way. They've got this sense of entitlement that they think they deserve, certain things.
Yep.
But you would have seen this, Rich, in your campaigning, that these bloody, one-sided politics that just push and bully their way into things and don't let up.
I think, and we've talked about it on this podcast, about common sense. Common sense has got to be the be-all and end-all, and that's what we're here for. And we talk about common sense with crime and things like that. We're talking about locking people up longer that do hard crime and all this. Well, I think that going back to Victoria, sorry, Vince, but now that Daniel Andrews has put a big, strong stance in one area, he should be able to impose those stances on other areas too. That'll be interesting to see after all this.
Don't hold your breath.
Well, we'll see.
Because, in fact, it's the opposite what they do with crime.
Yeah.
Victoria is the crime capital of Australia, not just because so much crime does take place here, but the judiciary and how they let criminals off the hook and give them the slap over the wrist with a wet lettuce leaf most of the time. That's encouraging people to commit more and more crime.
Yeah, correct. This is a
another
problem. We've got so much intimidation and control happening around us. Even with the mask wearing and things like this that we've seen through the COVID pandemic, right? They're so happy to
line with
really enforce these measures on people, right?
On normal, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens.
And we're talking about
but
even
with other people, criminals.
Correct.
Different set of rules.
Correct. All these home invasions that we've seen over the last 5 years and things like, that they get caught. A lot of them get spat back out at the cop
A lot
shop.
of these youth gangs,
Yeah.
some of the African gangs out in the western suburbs, they just send them all home.
Yep. Yet we're seeing
Because they don't want to be seen as racist.
we're seeing two elderly people at a bloody park knitting, and they're getting fined and arrested for not wearing. There's just
A mask, yeah.
That's why the election tonight's important. It's all important. It all ties in. And
It makes you feel really powerless, doesn't it, to some degree?
The Governor of Victoria, in these circumstances, should step in.
Yep. Well, a point.
Pardon the pun, but she should grow some balls.
Yep.
and say, right, if you don't resign,
Well, that's not gonna happen.
I'm going to make a decision on you and your government because you don't deserve to govern after this report.
But the journos have covered this quite extensively of late. She was appointed by Dan Andrews
That's irrelevant.
himself, right? No, it does. They flock together, mate.
That
right?
doesn't matter. It's
Right?
not the point.
No,
she's there to
that-
hold the government to account.
Okay, and this is my argument because a lot of them are saying, a lot of the journos have covered this, and they're saying that you'll never see it happen because of the uproar or the aftermath that John Kerr faced back in 19.
Because of what
75.
they call convention.
Yes,
It's
right.
the convention
Now,
is that you don't interfere.
if you ask me, you don't hold a position like that if you're worried about your personal execution when it comes time to make a decision. Okay.
Right.
If you hold a position like that and you're representing the Queen, you're representing the Crown in Parliament, and a decision is to be made, you cannot. If you are there and you are worried about your career, the execution of your personal career, then get out of the fucking position immediately. Okay, when a country or a state is in your hands and the future is in your hands, and you are more worried about yourself and the future of your career than to save the people of that country or that state, then fucking move on.
Yep.
Okay, because we are well and truly in a position now, and we were in a position a long time ago where it was very much reasonable enough for someone like Linda Dessau to step in and take control of this bloody place, because we are spiraling out of control, and it's going to happen before people's eyes, and it's going to be too fucking late. And I've said it before. Go ask the bloody survivors of the Nazi camps and the survivors of the bloody, families of the survivors of the Soviet Union. Okay? Yep. Ask them what they thought was going to, if they knew what was coming ahead when they started to have curfews imposed on them and liberties taken away.
Yep.
Right? Ask them if they saw what was going to come after, and I guarantee they fucking didn't.
Yep.
Right? Save yourself while you've got the chance and stand up for God's sake.
Yep. Oh, look.
100%.
We are living in the most piss week of fucking societies.
Even when the Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, said that there is absolutely no doubt, right, that the second wave was caused entirely by the hotel quarantine disaster, right? There and then should have been a resignation straight away.
Yep.
Because
by all of them,
your own
all
Chief
of them.
Health Officer saying, well, it all stems back to these cases, and those decisions were made by the Andrews government, whether it's this person, that person, public servants, or what it is. It all comes back to the government, and it all comes back ultimately to him.
Yep.
If Daniel Andrews had an ounce of integrity, he would have resigned.
Yep.
Months ago.
And people resign for so much less. I mean, who did you vote for in local council, Adrian?
Who did I vote for in local council? Well, I'm in Whittlesea, so unfortunately we've been a shambolic administration
three
for a while.
councils last year were sacked. So these things happen, and you get sacked for a lot less.
Well, he told me he's not going to vote for you, Richard. He said it wasn't.
No, but that's the thing. Like, you got a lot of people that I think disregard the importance of the privilege we have to vote. Right? It is a fucking privilege.
Yep.
Right? And people just make fun of it. They disregard it. They have no care towards it.
It's
And then you find yourself in a position like we're in now because you didn't speak up, or you went to the ballot box and put an empty form in, or did a donkey vote, whatever you did, because you didn't give a shit. Well, you know what? If you're going to be here for the suffering, then you fucking deserve to suffer.
That's right. Well, some people even put a picture of a dick on the ballot, and you know what? You know what Richard's
Really?
What's short for Richard?
Dick.
Yeah, so I should pick
So,
up that vote.
so do you pick up that vote or what? Does he get that vote?
He gets the donkey vote. All right, listen, let's move on. We've got another election to talk about very briefly. The US election is taking place on Wednesday, our time. Wow, guys, this is going to be interesting, isn't it? Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Donald Trump for the Republican Party, Joe Biden for the Democratic Party. The system of government there is that they have an electoral college made up of 538 members, and each of the states holds certain numbers of seats in that college, and that's all different from one state to the next. So therefore, you need 270 seats, if you like, within those states to hold a majority in the college, the electoral college. Key seats to keep an eye out on if you're going to follow the US election coming up would be current Republican-held seats. These are seats that Donald Trump got just over the line marginally in 2016.
Yep.
And keeping in mind, in 2016, he ended up with 306, so comfortably got over the 270. The Democrats ended up with 232. Key seats to keep an eye on. Arizona, which holds 11 seats in the college. Florida, 29. That's a big one.
Yep.
Georgia, 16. That's fairly significant. Iowa with 6. Michigan with 16. North Carolina with 15. Ohio with 18. Pennsylvania, another big one with 20. Texas is huge, 38.
Yeah.
That should go to Donald Trump, I would have thought,
Yep.
especially now that Joe Biden's told everyone that he's going to start transitioning the oil industry out
Yeah.
in favour of renewables. That's
Yep.
probably going to cost him Texas easily,
Yep.
and Pennsylvania for that matter,
I agree.
and Wisconsin, which has got 3. So those 10 states
That's a big
are
one.
going to hold the key to who wins and who loses. But
Yep.
all of the left-wing media over there, they are as corrupt as they come. The CNNs, the MSNBC, they've got not a good word to say about Trump in any program that you watch 24/7.
Yep.
They've been anti-Trump since before he became president and in the last 4 years since he did become president.
Yep.
Take no notice of anything that they say. The polls last time in 2016 showed that Hillary Clinton was going to absolutely
Blow it out of the water.
blow them out of the water, massive, not even a landslide. They were predicting an avalanche.
Yeah.
Well, in the end, it was the other way around.
Yep.
Don't underestimate how many people in America keep their mouths shut about being a Donald Trump supporter for fear of it's going to hurt them because they might lose their job or they might get kicked out of school or they might, whatever the reasons.
Well, just on that,
Right.
we have that issue here.
Yeah, we
on the
do.
other side of the world.
We
No.
do.
As a Trump, if you are a Trump supporter here in Australia,
You get talked down too.
right? You there's many places that will not tolerate that in the workplace. You'll lose your job.
Yep.
Now we're on the other side of the fucking world. Imagine
In America
how
itself.
bad it is over there. Okay, these, but not only are they at risk of losing their job and things like this, and their character kind of being tarnished, but they get bashed.
I'm telling you now that there's not one passionate Joe Biden supporter outside of his wife, right? Because he doesn't stand for anything other than espousing these far left policies like shutting down the oil industry,
Yep.
going towards renewables, etc. He's going to do, in my opinion, what Bill Shorten did. The biggest mistake Bill Shorten did was lurch so far to the left that he lost even his own base supporter. Now, I think that that's what's going to happen here. I am expecting a red wave across America on Wednesday.
Yep.
When I say a red wave, it's only because the Republican Party is coloured red.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
No, we know what you
happens
mean.
to be a right-wing party, but I think Donald Trump will absolutely shit it in. Look, I could end up being wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll cop it. But based on what I'm seeing in terms of the optics out there in the real place, where the real people live, there is a massive wave of support to reinstate him for another 4 years. All these far left-wing socialists, they're all against him. They're blaming him for the COVID crisis. You've got to remember that just like us in Australia, they have 51 states that have all got their own governors. They make the decisions in their states, just like Daniel Andrews makes decisions here in Victoria.
Yep.
It's not Donald Trump's fault. He has supplied them with, whether it be ventilators, PPE equipment, funding for hospitals, whatever it might be. Right? He provided them with everything he could. But nevertheless, they're all blaming him for the coronavirus.
Yeah. Well, I think
Right?
a lot of these governors opened up very early on.
Supported him.
Well, no. What I mean is a lot of these governors opened up very early on in almost a direct mission to increase case numbers and see the place spiral out of control with the election coming up to then, throw it back on Donald Trump and make, obviously, people look at the country as a whole. And that's what they've been hitting him with through the election campaigns is the, 40,000 case numbers a day. You look at all these case numbers, they're coming from these democratic states where run by these democratic leaders or governors.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you now, it was a deliberate ploy to cause these outbreaks in these states because it falls back on Donald Trump. And now that their case numbers are there, despite it being their own actions that are opening up and causing these outbreaks, they're throwing it back to Donald Trump. So it's these bullying antics and these ways of campaigning, and they're just a powerhouse, these lefties, whether any country in the world.
Put COVID-19 aside for just 1 second. What Donald Trump is trying to do is uphold the American value system.
Yep.
He is still patriotic as hell. Everyone who's patriotic in America would be voting for him. He's trying to stand up against the extreme left-wing groups like Antifa, who are trashing their cities like Portland and Seattle. They've copped it hard. Minneapolis. And I think a lot of people are very frightened in America about what sort of America they'll be living in if the Democratic Party get in. Because these places will end up being running rife with crime and corruption.
Yep.
And they've seen firsthand what some of these cities have become in democratically run cities.
Yep.
Where the Lord Mayor of that city is a lefty, and they've allowed these groups to run riot.
Yeah.
And looting and smashing windows of businesses. Why is it their fault?
Yeah, of course.
And for those who want
they've seen that, and I reckon that will play into Donald Trump's hands.
For the gambler as well, there's some good odds there on Donald Trump as well. So
you're going to put
where do you sit, Rich?
You're going to put 20 cents each way on Donald Trump.
We've spoken about Trump in a few podcasts. We haven't been here. So
look, obviously I'm a Trump fan. You know, and I think it's nothing wrong with being patriotic and wanting to make your country the greatest in the world. I think that's a good thing. I think that I don't know about the way it'll go, though. I'm not as confident as Vince there because the media plays a big part, Vince. You can see through the media, but
they have deliberately, in my view, tried to take the wind out of the sails of the Republican voter.
The sad thing when the media is so one-sided, and it's hugely one-sided.
You can't trust the media anymore. It's pathetic.
It is. Over there, you must really feel like your hands are tied there because Trump, we know when he went one office, his election promises he made true. Most of those election promises, and I think he's been, I don't think he's been as bad, and I think there's been a lot of personal attacks on him. And talk about bullying, I think the media have bullied him, and society's bullied him.
Well, tell me before
I think he's faced more. He's faced more backlash,
he's faced more than anybody I've ever seen.
Bullying from the media than I think anyone we've ever seen.
It's all fake news.
But I just hope that America vote the right way, and I think that right vote must be for Trump because the agenda of the other party and the Democrats is a scary one, and I think it is not just America that's going to fall victim to them. It is the entire Western world because we're all influenced and somewhat empowered by America, the biggest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. And it comes from Hollywood. It's everywhere, and I think he is going to save that Western world as we know it. Yep. Should America vote the right way?
In the past, if you want to take any lessons from the past, whenever America has ended up voting in a Democratic president, like Bill Clinton, like Barack Obama, etc., Jimmy Carter before him in the 1970s, before Clinton, they have never been as radical to the left.
Yep.
They've been far more centre-left. This party has lurched so far to the left that they are talking about zero emissions by year 2050, etc., etc., etc. Basically closing down the oil industry, the gas industry, anything that can produce any sort of carbon emission, you're out.
Yep.
Do you know how many people's livelihoods, how many businesses, how much it's going to affect their industries, their export industries, etc. if this happens?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to let this happen.
Yeah.
And before COVID-19 came along, the American economy was sailing. It was coasting so nicely. It was, the stock market was up at record levels. Unemployment was down to the lowest levels. Yeah. He did what he said he was going to do, and the results were there for all to see.
Do you want this society that is, indulging in this political correctness bloody regime, or do you want a society that does what is right and what has to be done, what's needed to be done? That is what you're voting up against here. Okay, and this is what we battle with every day.
What I love about Trump, and you even see it in his language or hear it in his language at his rallies, is he doesn't give a damn about political correctness. He says a lot of things.
We all know that.
He says a lot of things that'll stoke up some of the lefties
China
in the world.
He's not unlike you.
He doesn't care. Oh, well, I don't care either. But that's why he appeals to so many people, because there are a lot of people out there that they have had it up to here with political correctness.
Yeah, spot on.
And trying to appease all the minorities.
That's why we're here as well. I think that's the reason why we continued on with this podcast, is because of that exact reason.
If you want to talk about political correctness and someone getting into trouble,
you're not going to find any here.
What about the recently elected mayor of Perth, Basil Zempilas?
Yeah,
most of us know from Channel 7.
Let's have a. This is a very interesting one, and we'll touch on this one quickly before we wrap up.
So he was on radio recently. Not even 2 weeks into his mayorship, or whatever you want to call it, Lord Mayor of Perth.
Yep.
He's on his regular show on
Radio
6PR in Perth, and this is what he said.
Yep.
If the child's got an old fella, that's going to make it a little difficult if that person's trying to get into the ladies' cubicles and the like. I mean, at school, I don't know that they're going to be that happy.
The new era, Basil. Get into it. It's the new era. If I subscribe to being a girl, I'm a girl.
No, you don't. No, wrong.
No.
If you've got
You're
a penis,
either male,
exactly,
or you're female.
If you've got a penis, mate, you're a bloke. If you've got a vagina, you're a woman.
Not necessarily.
Game over.
No, it's not game over.
I have to agree with Basil. I think most people will, but many people will be too shit scared to agree with it.
I strongly agree, and I'm just going to put my hand down Vince's pants here.
Just to double check. To double check.
Well, look, you can't even.
You are not.
You can't even joke about it. No, but I'm very strong views.
Yep.
That a male's a male and a female's a female.
Yep. Well, I don't even know how this is an argument. This is my opinion. Is feeling one way and whatever is one thing, but we're getting into and let's not.
So what Basil said was basically
let's not detract from the fact that
biological fact.
A lot of the lefties live their life based on science. Okay.
And fear.
Right? No, but they live their life.
Good point.
Based on science. Okay. Now.
You mean like the science of climate change and the science of
the science of the human body and genetics and all that is all scientific.
That particular part of science is called biology.
Right? No, but what I'm saying is they swear by science. They make decisions on science.
Yes.
The lefty governments live by the decisions they make on science.
The science that they create rather than the science that exists.
Science will fucking tell you, in case you've been missing something, that a male has a penis and a female has a vagina. Mm-hmm. So the fact that there's even an argument here fucking baffles me, because it is as simple as that. It doesn't get much more complicated than that. I don't understand what this whole argument is. And, they've attacked him over this like nobody's business, right? Mm-hmm. And all he's stating is the scientific fact and the truth.
Well, do you know what the reaction was to those comments? The advocacy group, Trans Folk of WA, labelled Basil Zempilas's comments as repugnant, bigoted, narrow-minded, parochial, and fundamentally denying contemporary science. Really? So he's saying that it's in denial of contemporary science to believe that if you're born with a penis, you're male, and if you're born with a vagina, you're female. That apparently contradicts contemporary science. Adrian,
So
can you make any sense of that?
Well, first, can you tell me what contemporary science is? Is that the science that's been spun with bullshit?
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
The fairy floss.
It's the science that us lefties create in our own minds, and we call it fact, right?
What a load
It's
of
something
bullshit.
that we dream up because we want it to be true,
Fairy floss.
not because it is true. Fairy floss science. Is that what you were trying to say?
Fairy floss science is what I call it.
Yeah. Now, these people are calling him bigoted, repugnant, because he has stated a biological fact
Yep.
that they don't want to acknowledge anymore.
Is it true?
Because it's not contemporary
Is it
science.
true that Caesar only had one testicle?
Caesar?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't around back then. I'll tell you one thing. He had balls.
No, but it's just, I don't know, these issues here that come up here and there, and they really shit me.
But you know the other thing that I was expecting, and it didn't take too long before this Jurovich bloke said it. Further, it puts LGBTQIA plus people, or if you want to call them just the alphabet people, at increased risk of harm when we are already a vulnerable group in society. So it's the whole victim thing. We're the victim of everyone else's, opinions and everyone else's view of the world.
Yeah.
So unless we all take their view of the world, right, this minority who happens to hold what percentage of society? 1%? 2%?
Yep.
I'm not sure how much it is.
Vince, we're not
All of
bad
a
people.
sudden,
Just want to say one thing. We're not.
I've got a lot of friends who are homosexual. It doesn't mean, I don't have any transgender people as friends personally,
Not
but
that you know. Have you seen?
not that I'm aware of.
You haven't been to Richards after.
But I don't have an issue. You want to live that sort of lifestyle, go for your life. But don't impose your views on everyone else.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, hey, look, I'm the
And
same.
if we don't agree, all of a sudden we're bigoted.
I'm not against the transsexual. I'm not against. Can I say that transsexual? Or transgender, whatever. But I'm not like, because I understand it's there, and I probably wouldn't want to have that choice. I think most people perhaps would just like to be normal. I think, but so I'm not against them, but I'm against these people that just make it an issue and just.
They've hounded him and hounded him and hounded him and hounded him. And what's Basil done? What so many other people do. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I apologise. I forgot that I what did he say? I forgot my position.
He forgot.
I forgot that I'd recently been elected Lord Mayor of Perth.
I forgot about my position as mayor.
And I probably shouldn't have gone onto that radio show and expressed my views on things. Well, just because you've become the mayor of Perth, why should you all of a sudden change your opinion on things?
Well, stand for something. They do.
Something.
The lefties do. Yep. Why should the socialists and the left wing be so easily accepted in standing up for what they think is right and their views? Right? They push them very, very enforcefully on people. But if you've got an opposing view, you got to sit back, shut up, and be scared.
That's right.
Right? Like you just then. Mm-hmm. You said transsexual, and then you said, "Can I say that?" This is the fucking problem.
This is the world. Except unless you're Donald
You're
Trump.
treading on eggshells.
But unless
this is the problem.
Unless you're Donald Trump, and that's why we've all.
Well, you need leaders like that in the world. It's so important to have leaders like that in the world because the right wing cannot stand up and say what needs to be said or what they think, right? But the left, by all means, go ahead.
Life.
Not only are you allowed to say it and speak it freely, you can even enforce it on people.
100%. And look, just Adrian, with that, I've just come off this council election. I'm not going to claim that I was bullied, but I've been pounded, absolutely pounded to that point where Vince is saying, where you're a little bit, you feel like you're the worst person on the earth sometimes. You were mentioning about progressive, which is important, okay?
Yep.
There's a party in Canada, so the right-wing party, slightly more right-wing than the Liberals over there. The Liberals are on the other side, but they're called the Progressive Conservatives.
Yep.
Which is not a bad thing, but this is a case of being, well, I mean, Vince,
progressive conservative.
Yeah, that's what they call the PCs.
That's like saying I'm a Carlton Magpies supporter.
It gets confusing, but I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, I see. I don't know.
But they're trying to be all things to all people now, are they?
I think so.
Look, I think
progressive.
I've spoken to you about this, but I think it's important to see some progression. Right? You have to progress with the world. Yep. Okay, and as I said before, if the world had no progression, if the world had no progression, we'd still be watching men fight with lions in the Colosseum.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm saying is, I think it's great that we can see same-sex relationships be accepted and things like this. I am all for that. The fact that they're not having to live in silence anymore and all that, I'm all for that. That is progression, okay? Because these far righties, right, wouldn't have any of that at all. Okay, we've got to remember that.
Yep.
Progression is progression, but this far left progression that they're trying to enforce on people.
Enforce is the right word. It's on their terms.
Impose. Right?
Enforce. To me, it's enforced because it's like you've got no choice and it's very forceful. Okay.
Yeah.
To me, the transgender side, I haven't got there yet, mate. Okay. To me, the heart is very different to biology. All right. You may not be able to help or not help, but you may not be able to change where the heart leads you. But biology is biology, and that can never fucking change. The universe created people, men and women, okay? And that's what it's done. You cannot change that.
Do you know what you're identifying here? The fundamental difference between a so-called progressive person or progressive thinker, left wing, if you want to call it, versus the right wing, more conservatively minded person, is that left wing minded people base their decisions on how they feel about things. So it's very much based on feelings rather than what conservatives do is they base it on reason and fact.
Yeah.
Okay? Conservatives are people who generally want to keep things as they are. They're happy with the way the country is and the way it fundamentally, is tracking. They don't want upheaval. Okay? But left-wing, progressively minded political leaders, for example, I'll never forget when Barack Obama was first going up for president, right? He promised to fundamentally transform America. Now, that is like a red light to anyone who's close to being right-wing, because that means you're going to totally change society.
Yep.
Right? That's what these people want. They want to change the nature of traditional Western world capitalist societies into socialist utopias. Yep. And it's not going to work.
Let me give you one quick example too, and this is from a very intelligent friend of mine. He's an accountant. He's a greenie. He's left as left can be.
Yep.
I don't speak to him that much these days, but he's very green. Now
it's not hermit, is it?
Now what he said, this is what he said. I was driving with him in the car, and we're going to get to that renewables. He said we're going to get there fast. I said, what are you talking about? We're in a climate emergency. He said. So I said, well, what do you mean? What do we do? He says, let's get rid of all of the base load. Even if hospitals go under, even if businesses fail, and we'll all rush to get those new renewables faster. Now, that's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the ideologies of these. It's just amazing. We spoke about it, in a couple of podcasts about the Greens and all that. Like, they got real crazed ideas, and I don't know how people can sway that way at all. They end up getting in power, though. That's the scary thing, Richard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look at that, and I've said it. I said this is on the local.
So
level.
Many of these parties, they've actually got power in Parliament.
Yep, that's right. No, they do. They're very good at getting in power too.
It's amazing. But again, it's a time in Australia where we've got a shitload to talk about. So if we had 3 hours to do it, we would. But I doubt whether you'd be listening and holding on for 3 hours. So
okay, quick prediction: Queensland and US.
Well, I'm going to say Deb Frecklington, again, the freckle, because I just think she deserves a chance and Queensland need one hell of a change. Yep. And for me, it can only be the great Donald Trump.
What about you, Rich?
The freckle, Trump and Stockman in the local election.
Yes, the Stockman.
And look, I actually am going to predict almost a hung parliament scenario, but I think Labor will end up just scraping in with the assistance of minor parties to form a minority government in Queensland. I hope I'm bloody well wrong.
You said quick prediction. Hurry the fuck up.
And the red wave will take place in US. Don't worry about that.
The hung parliament, is it male or female?
Oh, depends how well hung you are.
Make America great again, that's for sure. We've got 3 days to do it. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Political Spin. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Stay connected. Follow us on social media at Beyond Political Spin.